Okay, now pre-shipment, fresh packing credit, I'm not getting into that. Restructured advances, I'll just spend a minute there. This is something we need to really look at. Restructuring, whether it is being camouflaged as something else, as I talked to you about rolling over multiple times, or by enhancing the ad hoc limit, or by giving an extension of the ad hoc limits, these can all fall under the RBI definition of restructuring. And now a restructured advance itself, is it, if it is an absolutely bad case and you are giving another restructuring option to it, then that restructuring itself should be questioned. Just because it is the first restructuring, manager will say, sir, it's the first restructuring. First restructuring is not an NPA. Fine, first restructuring is not NPA, but is it eligible? From a common sense point of view, would you and I actually give an extension to a case like this? Does it deserve a restructuring? It's so bad, and the promoters are not cooperating. There is no way this business can revive. They are very sure they will not repay the money. You go through all correspondence, it's very clear that they have no intention to repay. And just because you want to show the performance of a branch, you are restructuring it. So then the client is doing you a favor by signing on the restructuring proposal, So that's not something which, as auditors, we need to accept. So look at it case by case. I can't really go beyond that, on restructuring. It's a very, very common sense approach where we need to apply all our professional skills to see whether it's a fit case. And this is again a fairly long slide, and I think I'm not really reading this, but this is a classic case of, restructuring without looking into the health of the borrower. Health of the borrower is most important. Let me once again emphasize, we're not here to do a technical job and somehow not classify it, or classify it either way. And suppose the health is really good, and it's a really good account, and everything else, all parameters are good, but only because of some technical problem it became an NPA. My recommendation is, please don't be cruel to the account. Just because it technically slipped because of some unfortunate incident that happened, or somebody the last day signatory was not there, or somebody missed to follow up, or a check was given to a wrong account or in a wrong name, and all these are all unfortunate things that can happen. Do not be cruel and kill an account when you are convinced that the health is good. So that should be paramount. Health is good, your numbers are there, and you are convinced that, using your own professional acumen, you are convinced that this is a good account. In that case, I will say the reverse. Please do not classify it as an NPA. But since that happens only once in a blue moon, 99% of the time what happens is account is unhealthy, and various things will be done to try and keep this afloat. So there we need to put our foot down also. Projects under implementation, again, bridges, roads, etc. The COD, that's important. There's something called commercial operation date. We need to understand what is COD, whether the COD date has been extended. The norms are clear. I'm not going to talk about the COD related norms and all that, since we have a session to follow. But understand whether this whole COD mechanism is working, and whether as per COD the date is already behind us, and thereafter if there is slippage beyond the norm prescribed period, 180-day norm, then fine. It's 90 for this and 180 for that. So then you need to classify. There's no point. The bridge is happening, the bridge will come, the bridge hasn't finished, we understand. But then they should have taken steps to see that, the COD is, done in the correct manner. Okay, I'm not going to talk about the next slide, which is on the extension of COD. So I think I have about 7-8 minutes, so I'll just close with the concerns which we have. I think I have more or less voiced the concerns as I have, during the course of the last 45 minutes. But these are our concerns in a snapshot. There have been large frauds in recent past. Everybody is held responsible and accountable. We are the auditors of the bank. We must be very clear that as branch auditors, our job is to ensure that there is a bank balance sheet. We must have the big picture in mind. There is a final big picture of the bank as a whole. And somebody there has to sign saying it gives a true and fair view. And that somebody who is signing is saying it gives a true and fair view is relying on all of us here in this room who are branch auditors. So we have that duty, and tomorrow that bank crashes, and if it does not give a true and fair view, everybody is pulled up. Trust me, we have done a special audit for RBI when the Global Trust Bank crashed in 2005-06. They appointed us to do a valuation due diligence for the takeover by the Oriental Bank of Commerce. And in about 2 weeks' time, we found out that in 5 branches in GTB, that's all. If you look at it, all other branches, everything else was okay. But there are 5 branches of Global Trust Bank. The major branches where all these frauds were happening. And it was unimaginable proportion. We were going into branches in the morning and by next evening coming out having made every account NPA. Every account, 400 crore, 500 crore advances, given by a branch, we come out having cleaned up that branch, 100% NPA. That kind of massive, frauds were happening in 4 or 5 branches. But in all other branches, so yeah, chairman tells me I have a few more minutes, so I think I can be a little more relaxed here. I was about to go on hyper mode and close it, but I think I have another 10 minutes to go. So that's good. Thank you. So what was happening in Global Trust Bank was very simple. Now what happens? Then once the problem comes, it's not only the central auditor who's going to be pulled up. Every branch auditor of these branches will also be pulled up. Tomorrow there is a professional liability. Just because we finished it in 4 days, we don't have the professional liability is not an argument which will hold ground. We will certainly have to prove everything at that point. And if a problem comes, then they will call for working sheet files, they will call for program sheets. Now there is a new mechanism also, the FRRB mechanism. We had an FRRB auditor who was at our office for about 5 days. 5 full days, 2 chartered accountants from Rajasthan were at office going through every little aspect of our bank audit. Every little aspect. We were the central auditors of a bank and every little thing in our file has gone through, they have gone through, taking the disclosure, this particular figure, and every note, every footnote, how you have checked, what are the instructions for every area, what are the instructions given by you to the people who have gone. Every branch audit as part of this review, they have gone through and looked at how did you go, who went, what's their adequate supervision, how is the supervision documented, how is the process of verification documented. My God, it was a both terrific and terrible experience, because it's not easy when somebody comes in 2-3 years later and, somebody else who is not hands-on with that particular bank comes in and asks you all kinds of questions, and we are so used to being at the other end where we are irritating all our clients as internal auditors. This was more than we could handle when they are asking us questions and we are having to explain these things, but that's the way it is. Multiple organizations or agencies are into it. If we do audits we are the statutory auditors of ONGC. After the end of ONGC, before the CAG auditor, we have to go and sit with the CAG auditor. CAG auditor, the person there is not a chartered accountant. Many of the questions which they are asking are not relevant. But can you show disrespect there? Obviously you can't. And can you say that we will not give you this? Obviously you can't. So we must have all this with us. We must be so equipped that we should be able to convince them. And that is where I'll move on to the next point. Because there are large frauds, we need to be more equipped from a documentation perspective, and it's not easy. Greening of unhealthy accounts, housing loans, that's another area. Massive frauds happening in housing loans. The permit is not there. They've approved the whole project for a 70-story building and loan is sanctioned and all that. And they have not obtained any of the permits required. Finally, the whole project has to get scrapped by when the promoter has taken the money and disappeared. Who is responsible? Housing loan. Retail vehicle loan. Again an area. In a particular case we saw 2-wheeler loans are okay, but 3-wheeler loans are very risky. See? 2-wheeler and 4-wheeler are people like you and me who 80%, 90%, we are seeing that it's okay. 3-wheelers in this particular bank that we were auditing or in a large branch were a huge number. Probably the message also got out in that part of this thing that it's okay. From this bank if you take, it's no problem. But we found 80% NPA in 3-wheelers in a particular branch. We found a few initially, but since all these are 30,000, 40,000, it's not in our materiality radar. But when we audit, we always take from every segment 4 or 5. From every segment, housing loan, look at 3 or 4. Stocks, 3 or 4. Vehicle loans, 3 or 4. Here, 3 or 4 that we looked at when we saw this, we did a few little more. Extent of checking increased. Okay, 3 or 4, you make it 15 or 20. You do 15 or 20 and almost everything is NPA. So, okay, do 20 more, everything NPA. You are able to conclude that everything is gone, So, then accommodation, which I spoke about in detail, so I'm not getting into it, check purchase and promissory notes, etc. Branch dependence on one or two borrowers is a huge risk, major concern. If that branch total advances 400 crore, out of which 280 crore comes from one or two people, then basically the manager is almost like the manager of that client. That's how we should see it. I'm not questioning the integrity of any manager here. I'm sorry. This is an ICAI seminar, so I'm speaking only from the perspective of ICAI, not intended to offend any bank official here. Sorry about that, but I'm just giving a realistic picture here. We see that, whenever over-dependence is there on large accounts, the relationship is very different. They will have a more commanding say. Disputes within borrower entity, huge risk. You read the correspondence and you see that the brothers are fighting, cousins are fighting, there is a division, there is a split, there is a demerger, there is a slump because of a conflict. There is a problem there. There is always a likelihood of an issue coming up there. Persisting audit comments, be it from concurrent auditor, inspection auditor, or RBI's AFI report and all that, there are persisting irregularities comments in certain accounts, problem. Insufficient operations, etc. I think I've spoken. Rollover, extension, I've spoken about all of these. Bullet loans. This is another category which is given where it is an unsecured loan, one-shot repayment. 100 crore, 200 crores bullet loan given in 90 days, it needs to be repaid. No security, nothing, no documentation. Permitted also. Largest of banks are giving bullet loans. Take a look at it and understand whether this bullet loan is, the appraisal procedure and whether it is okay. Fine, you give a bullet loan to a company which is very well established, a short-term bridge loan type of bullet loan to a strong company. Fine, you give 1,000 crore to Wipro. By and large, I think it should be okay. But you give 1,000 crore or 100 crore to an unknown entity based on some project report which they give, then there is a problem. Credit supervision, again, I'm not getting into that. Concerns on trust. This is the biggest problem. Nobody trusts one another these days, so you can't really accept anything at face value when you're an auditor. Just because the manager tells you something or he says that I have actually seen it, I have inspected it, you have to believe me and all that. You can't, even if the manager is your best friend, you need proof, you need documentation, you need to ensure that your house is in order, because tomorrow we could have multiple agencies tailing us. So let us ensure that our part of the job is done and documented pakka. Prima facie, unacceptable explanation, justification should be factual, justifying end use, technical regularization. These are all, again, just concerns on trust which we need to be very, very worried about. We need to be worried about. We're not living in happy times. Effective use of technology comes in. I'm not talking about technology, we've had a session here earlier, but we need to understand. Gone are the days where we say we don't understand technology. If you don't understand technology, bring on board somebody, maybe some of the others who are practicing, may not be as part of your firm, but if there is somebody else or there are people who understand technology, if you need to bring them in for a day, do so that your people are taught, so that your team is also equipped to handle the technology, because everything can be drawn out. You can get watch listed accounts and probable NPA. Every bank has a mechanism to give you reports. They will tell you it's not available, but if you know it and you take it up with the top management, they will give you. Normally what the watch listed or a probable NPA is one wherein the 60-day norm they will apply in a system. In few banks which we have seen, that's what we see. 90 days it becomes NPA. So the bank has internal reports of all the cases which have crossed the 60-day threshold. So no dues, no repayment in 60 days, or credits exceeding for 60 days. They have a report which comes out. That is how they look at which are the probable NPAs. They may not share it with us. But imagine how useful it would be if we get access to it. Many of the NPAs which we have caught are because we have seen that are those which we picked from this probable NPA reports which are there and available for the banks. So that's regarding that, and suggestions to be given in the branch audit report. I'll close with this. several things we can write about in the branch audit report. So please do not look at it as, just that forms being sent, you just put your signature there and go. Please don't do that. Let there be suggestions, add that on, let there be, annexure to the audit report, annexure to the LFAR, where you talk about how the quality of appraisal can be improved, how CIBIL has to be looked into, how sanction terms need to be looked into, you can even talk about growth and etc., because you have a greater grip on that area if you're if a person from the local area, and you can even talk about growth and what the bank needs to do. Nobody stops you from doing all of that. You can. I'm not saying you must, but if you want to, you should certainly do that too. It helps in the long run. An emphasis on recovery and constant monitoring of all these things. All of that has to be covered in the branch audit report. Talk about the stressed accounts, give detailed annexures. Anyway, you're going there, anyway 4 or 5 days we are all spending there. Might as well come out with a report so that we are not going to be implicated. And we also have a job satisfaction quotient also, right? When you do a good job, you're happy you've done a good job. So might as well put all your observations in the report and convey to the bank also that you've done a good job, so that everybody is happy with the quality of our work. And I have about 10-15 slides on issues relating to advances, but as I told you when I began, I knew that I would not be able to get into it, so I should be happy and satisfied that I've been able to cover to the extent that I had initially envisaged. The rest of it is also there in the material, and this is who I am, and this is my contact details. So if any of you want to be in touch with me, I'd be more than happy to be of assistance, and I would certainly, the floor is open if there is something. Can somebody give him a mic, please? Yeah.
You told some
yes, sir.
Cash remittance, but through RTGS. But from external, how to identify the source of credit?
Source of credit. It's not very easy. As I told you.
Methods they are doing it.
Yeah. In fact, both cash and source is not easy. Now, for source which comes in through cash, there is a cash teller mechanism. Now, through the cash teller, you can understand to some extent, not in all cases. Now, from an RTGS or a source, you may need to go to the RTGS code, RTGS transfer. You will be able to, this bank has a mechanism of their entire inter-branch mechanism. They will be able to tell, that's the point. They are able to give you the intimation as to from which bank it has come. From which bank and from which account information can be given by the banks. But again, it's a drill down procedure. We need to some degree of extra cooperation is required from the bank. It may not be entirely possible from a branch perspective, which is why I said, so when it is a dicey situation, it may actually be better to escalate it, because from, tell me, sir. Yes.
Is there any credit like that?
No.
Connecting all banks?
Connecting all banks, no, I don't think there is any mechanism like that, as such.
You say that we have to send, besides our regular reports, our own reports separately. But very often, as a centralized auditor, while consolidating LFAR, I am not getting the individual reports of the auditor. Do you think that we have to send it to the statutory also a copy separately, so that this can be taken note of?
Sir, you are talking from the perspective of a central auditor?
Yes.
Yes, sir. As a central auditor, we are given all the reports. We need to necessarily be given all the reports. We get this whole pile, 600 branches, 700 branches. Now what we do is we put our people to go through it. And
no, what I am saying is only regular LFAR reports are given. The separate report which is subject to the
separate report, only problem is a separate report, there is no form for it.
No form, but because due to inadequate space or due to the very peculiarity of a particular case, wherever you give, it's not being forwarded to a centralized auditor.
I think that's...
Do you think that the branch auditor has to send it to the statutory auditor, or how to go about it?
Normally, branch auditor forwards it to the bank. That's the standard procedure, but this is something which is...
Some management, they bypass it.
Okay, so sometimes what you are saying is that the bank gets it, but they don't pass it on to the statutory auditor, and that risk is always there. But what we do is, whenever we see any major irregularity in any major account, And where we think it's NPA, we'll classify. But where we think it can go both ways, we make it a point to talk to the branch auditor and find out, have you looked at it?
But the information is not being passed on. Thereafter only you can act upon it. That's what I am telling you.
I understand, sir. I think all that we can do is maybe in the long term, we can think about requesting the branch auditor to send a copy to the statutory auditor directly, probably.
Yeah, that was possibly one of the suggestions I was thinking about, that, as the instructions from a central statutory auditor goes down to, the branch auditors, they could ask or request that the branch auditors, if they come across anything that is not outside, rather it is outside the LFAR or something that they want to bring to the attention, not just they'll anyway send the copy to the branch, and as well as they'll send it to the head office. They could also send them a copy or share their email ID where they could even have an informal.
Excellent. So maybe that's something which we can take up during the meetings which we have, the
Exactly.
statutory and branch auditors meet.
Because
So
that's
it's an excellent
strictly between our own fraternity, so
Absolutely.
it'll make a good platform for us to discuss.
It's a very practical and wonderful suggestion, ma'am.
If I may add, the central statutory auditor can demand it as a matter of right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You don't have to
Rather than a demand, I would only say it's
Yeah,
a
okay.
request.
It comes,
Because we are all together in the same platform of the CAI, so it
Yeah.
might help, kind of bringing about a parity in our
Absolutely.
clarity rather. Another just question I had on jewel loans. A lot of banks nowadays going for jewel loans, education loans, which are by and far, you won't have any recovery. Or if they do, jewel loans per se has about an 18 months tenure. Thereafter, they decide either you come and pay, like you have the bullet loans. The bullet loans is of a bigger volume, while jewel loans are more smaller in category. And if it is for agricultural purposes or non-agricultural purposes, now of course RBI has come out with a circular for non-agricultural jewel loans, but as a concurrent auditor for a branch, I have seen wherein it is okay, believe me, it's okay for them to issue new non-agricultural or agricultural jewel loans. On the same day, they close the earlier loan, and there's no actual cash inflow.
Totally.
So when I did take it up, it was only said, no, it's okay, it's still not an NPA. And I said, that's not the whole point. The point is of recovery, but then is there any other way that we could?
No, I think absolutely, because I think both of us come from Kerala, which has probably the largest chunk of gold loans. The Muthuts and the Manappurams are originated and operate from there. This is a problem, certainly, yes. But all that we can say is that I think the LTV norms were made more stringent, brought to 60%. Now it's relaxed a little bit because I think their lobbies work very well. But we can only look at the LTV norms, and if the gold or the jewel is not spurious, then the way they look at it, it's like it's 100% secured, more than secured. You have given a loan to value of only 60%, and you have marked down to cost and below cost the holding you have. You sell it even without LTV, you will get more than that price, because gold prices have shot up in the last X amount of time. As long as the gold which is available is original and genuine, and if all procedures have been taken to ensure that the gold is not spurious, banks are safe. That's the line of thinking, and which, yeah. To some extent, yes, sir. I'm not denying that it is window dressing. I'm only saying from the bank's perspective, they haven't lost money is all I said. We have the job to classify it as an NPA, no doubt about it. Certainly. We can bring it to the notice that it is window dressing, and again if we think... Right. So that is, it's a clear case of window, if it is window dressing. And I think what Madam has just expressed and what I think you are also saying now is a case of window dressing. Certainly it has to be brought out, and certainly it's evergreening, certainly we need to classify. I don't think any of us here will dispute that it is to be classified. I'm only on a more practical argument which the bank will tell you. 100% it has to be classified, no doubt.
Because the gold prices are going up, they are making it.
Absolutely.
You said some time back that one bank has lost nearly 20 crores by extended finance to a concession company. It may be due to three reasons. First thing is a collusion between the branch manager, branch staff and the promoters. Second thing, there was a shortfall in the documentation and compliance of terms and conditions of sanction. Third thing, why they have released so much amount without doing what is called every stage, the evaluation by their panel engineer, stage of concession. Some engineers, they will give photos of the latest stage of concession also.
Sir, I think, we will see, as we do audits, now we'll see all kinds of bogus documents, we'll see all kinds of valuation reports. I think we have to exercise our own professional judgment. Just because another expert has given an opinion or a report, we cannot accept that prima facie without applying our own mind. I think there are, the ICA disciplinary committee has in several cases, said that also. The expert of the ICA disciplinary committee, Naganathan sir, will tell you, I'm sure you all have opportunity to interact with him. He will tell you, all kinds of things which are there. He has helped so many CAs come out of it. So he shared so many. We don't go to the disciplinary committee. We don't take up the cases of others to go to disciplinary committee. But he has shared several experiences with us, very, very interesting things where people have unfortunately got trapped or caught for no fault of theirs, but because of what tantamounts to professional negligence.
Sir, I'm Chokulingan from Pudukkottai. First of all, very nice presentation. My query is, you said that one account is being backed up by providing credit from another fresh loan. So what is the NPA status of both these accounts? One is being given credit by applying a fresh loan. What is NPA status of both these loans?
The account which would have otherwise turned NPA and where the credit has come in, that account becomes NPA, only that account. The other account where the